safe execution of all weapons productions for LANO, including all facilities to support the national security production missions, infrastructure management, and maintenance for weapons production, execution of integrated production schedule, and training and assessments of LANO's nuclear material productions operations. Most recently, Daniel was a division leader for the actinide materials processing power at LANO. Daniel also served as a site manager for the depleted uranium hexafluoride plant in Paducah, Kentucky. He was also the site manager for the deactivation of depleted uranium and demolition project at Bennett Lab in West Mifflin, Pennsylvania, and was the vice president for production at B&W Y-12 National Security in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. Daniel began his career in the U.S. Navy, where he served 28 years in various roles, increasing his responsibility in the submarine fleet. His service includes commanding officer for the USS Houston and commander for the submarine squadron 1620 in Biggs Bay, Georgia. He also served on the staff of the Vice Chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staffs, as the action officer for all matters pertaining to the Nuclear Weapons Council. Daniel holds a master's in National Security and Strategic Studies from the Naval War College and a bachelor's in engineering from the U.S. Navy Academy. And I'm also proud to say that he is a commander for our sister organization, the American Legion, here to represent the American Legion, and also Captain, retired U.S. Navy, Daniel Mack.
All right, hope that's the only one that blows away. Good morning, and thank you for coming, Father Mackey, Representative Chandler, Councilman Sheehy, ladies and gentlemen, most importantly, fellow veterans and future veterans. It's a beautiful day today to celebrate this 100th anniversary of Veterans Day. As we heard from the governor's proclamation, it was 100 years ago today, the first Armistice Day in honor of World War I. Unfortunately, World War II followed with veterans from America, all parts of America, displaying the honor, duty, and sacrifice needed to ensure the wondrous freedoms and posterity we continue to enjoy. And then, as we heard, President Eisenhower changed November 11th to Veterans Day to recognize those who have served in all wars in our history and for our future wars. Today, I would like to share some examples and anecdotes of this truly unique American character, integrity, and selflessness that is the American veteran. While I was researching this speech, I turned to one of my favorite 20th century philosophers, the late Lawrence Peter Yogi Berra. Before he was a Yankee All-Star and Hall of Famer, he earned a Purple Heart as a 21-year-old gunner's mate on a Navy ship during the Normandy invasion on June 6, 1944. Most of you know Yogi for saying it ain't over till it's over, but he also said many other things, including a nickel ain't worth a dime anymore. When speaking about baseball, 90% of this game is half mental. And my favorite about decision making, when you get to a fork in the road, take it. If you want to learn more about Yogi, he even has a book titled, I Didn't Really Say Everything That I Said. All right, I'm going to try to abridge my speech a little bit because of the wind, but if the wind dies down, you're stuck with all 15. No, it's not 15 pages. Honor. Veterans come from all over this great nation. From the coal mines of Scranton, Pennsylvania, like my father, who enlisted in the Army in January 1942 instead of returning to college at the University of Michigan for the rest of his freshman year. Or from large cities like Yogi Berra from St. Louis. Or from rural Alabama like Staff Sergeant Ray Lambert, a medic. He was also in the D-Day invasion in the first wave at Omaha Beach, where immediately upon getting off his LST, he was shot through the elbow. twice more shot on the beach while pulling dozens of soldiers to safety behind a lonesome rock until passing out from the loss of blood. At 98 years old, Ray authored his memory of D-Day, titled appropriately, "Every Man a Hero." Closer to home, there were hundreds of veterans here who served with courage and distinction from a small northern New Mexico town named Los Alamos. Some who were born here, some who came here, some who stayed here. One who stayed here was Lauren Cox, a Navy pilot who turned 100 years old this spring and shared many of his experience from World War II with 4 generations at a birthday celebration. Of course, there are those veterans who 76 years ago built the National Lab, well-known ones like Leslie Groves and Deke Parsons. But there were multiple veterans supporting the scientists in developing Little Boy, which helped to end World War II and provide the strategic deterrent we still enjoy as a nation today. Another New Mexican who distinguished himself was First Lieutenant Alexander Bonnyman Jr. for his gallantry as Executive Officer of 2nd Battalion Shore Party, 8th Marines, during the assault against enemy Japanese in Tarawa in the Gilbert Islands in 1943. Acting on his own initiative, First Lieutenant Bonnyman repeatedly defied the blasting fury of enemy bombardment to organize and lead his besieged men over the long open pier to the beach. He voluntarily crawled approximately 40 yards forward of American lines and placed demolitions in the entrance of a large Japanese encampment. Withdrawing only to replenish his ammunition, he led his men in a renewed assault, fearlessly exposing himself to hostile fire as he stormed the bastion, directed the placement of demolition charges, and flushed more than 100 enemy out of their hiding places, who were then cut down and allowed the Americans to safety. Assailed by additional Japanese gunfire, he gained the objective, made a heroic stand on the edge of the structure, and defended his position with determination in the face of a desperate charge. Unfortunately, he gave his life that day at Tarawa, but First Lieutenant Bonnyman, a New Mexican, is a Congressional Medal of Honor winner. Duty. American veterans have always had a sense of duty that has risen to the surface when called upon by their country. Many families have a long history of service to our country in the armed services. One is my friend Jim Berkman, a Navy veteran transplanted from New Mexico to Los Alamos by work at the lab. The Berkman family has a legacy of 7 generations of military service, including Jim. There's 1 Army and 1 Marine in there, but the rest 5 are Navy. Jim is a member of our American Legion Post 90, who's only not here today because he's burying his brother who recently passed away. I'm sure there are many other families here in New Mexico and elsewhere that you can think of that have a legacy similar to Jim Berkman's. Ones that come to mind for me is that the late Senator John McCain. You may know he comes from a Navy family, but his grandfather, nicknamed Slew, was an admiral of World War II and a pioneer of naval aviation. He supported the air campaigns, supported ground campaigns with air operations at Guadalcanal, Okinawa, and the conventional bombing of Formosa and the Japanese mainland. He was Admiral Halsey's chief of staff at the end of the war and attended the Japanese surrender on the USS Missouri at Halsey's insistence to represent naval aviation. Tragically, Slew McCain died 4 days later, right upon getting home to Coronado, California, of a heart attack. McCain's father, Jack McCain, or John Sidney II, was a decorated submariner who sank several Japanese ships during World War II and ultimately rose to the rank of 4 stars and served as CINCPAC, the commander of all U.S. forces in the Pacific during Vietnam from 68 to 72. In fact, Admiral McCain made bombing recommendations to Presidents Johnson and Nixon, knowing that his son John was a prisoner of war, some in an unknown location in Hanoi. Admiral McCain did his duty under great personal pressure, as is did his son as POW. John McCain's family and its Navy history was well known to his Vietnamese captors. They mocked his American military background, called him the Prince. McCain resisted many offers to denounce American military involvement by the Vietnamese, and also renounced an offer for early release from his torture, his personal torture, because he wouldn't criticize American policy. When POWs were finally released, he insisted on following U.S. policy of first captured, first released, to the letter. Other famous POWs refused favors for political statements, like the late Admiral Jim Stockdale, who was scheduled to give a press conference and got a sharp object he made and cut his face so they wouldn't put him on the press conference. And Jeremiah Denton, who later became a senator, he gave one of those press conferences only to give his name, rank, and service number while blinking out the word torture in Morse code continuously on the camera back to the world. These are truly are examples of honor. Another New Mexican who exhibited great sense of duty is another Congressional Medal of Honor recipient, Hiroshi Miyamura, who happens to be one of the Grand Marshals of the Veterans Day Parade today in New York City. He was born to Japanese parents in Gallup, New Mexico, where he's fondly known as Hershey and lives there to this day. He served in the Army for 6 months at the end of World War II, but he demonstrated the highest sense of duty while fighting in Korea in the 50s, when he held off an attacking unit of Chinese troops on April 25th, 1951. He was a corporal and a machine gun operator. He bravely told his men to evacuate when he could see enemy about to overrun their position, and he covered the withdrawal with his machine gun. While his men went to safety, he held off the advancing Chinese soldiers and then threw grenades when his men were out of the area. When friendly fire got closer and closer, he knew he had to get out of there. When he did, he went down the hill with only armed with a bayonet against Chinese soldiers. Thank you for that flyover from the local Civil Air Patrol. When escape seemed no longer possible, he got tangled in barbed wire and was injured. He was captured and sent to a North Korean POW camp where he was a prisoner for 2.5 years. Hershey Miyamura was also awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor and still lives in Gallup. The third area is sacrifice. You have examples of sacrifice displayed by veterans all around you. You see every day, every year. We have over 1,000 veterans working at the lab today. Some injuries are visible, particularly those involve loss of limbs. Some are not readily visible, including traumatic brain injury, TBI, or post-traumatic stress, PTS. The greatest generation from World War II, which I've mentioned several times, experienced PTS, although it was never diagnosed as that. My father, who served from 1941 to 45 as a medic in the Army in Europe at both Battles of the Bulge and the liberation of France after D-Day, told me he still had nightmares of battle and losing his 2 first cousins 50 years after the end of World War II. You could travel less than 100 miles away to Angel Fire to see the oldest Vietnam Veterans Memorial in the United States. Gene and Victor Westphal established the David Westphal Veterans Foundation to honor Americans veterans, members of our military force, by memorializing the sacrifices they have made and recognizing the sense of duty and courage displayed as they answered our nation's call to arms. The memorial at Angel Fire was originally known as Vietnam Veterans Peace and Brotherhood Chapel and had its origins in a battle near Con Thien, South Vietnam, in which 11 men lost their lives in 1968. 17 men lost their lives. Among those 17 was First Lieutenant David Westphal, their son. Thanks to their vision and determination, that memorial exists today to honor not only these 17 Marines, but all members of our armed forces. I highly suggest you take a trip up there. It's only 100 miles away, and experience the memorial yourself and with your family. Another local example we have of sacrifice is the service of First Lieutenant Micah J. Anderson, son of Brenda and Skip Anderson here in Los Alamos. Micah was a 2001 graduate of Los Alamos High School, where he was a member of the Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps, the NJROTC, that we have here serving us today by being the color guard. He enlisted and served 3 years in the Army Artillery, including a tour in Iraq as an NCO protecting convoys. In 2011, Micah graduated from Boise State University and earned a commission as an officer in the U.S. Army's Armor Branch. On June 21st, 2013, Micah Anderson was severely injured by an IED while leading his platoon on a mission near Kandahar, Afghanistan. He lost both legs above the knees in that attack, and that attack also killed 1 soldier and severely injured 6 others. Micah, his wife Lindsay, and their 2 sons now live in Idaho. He has 2 prosthetic legs, been medically retired from the Army, and remains very active in veterans medical care issues for the severely injured. Another great example, local example of sacrifice. The final example is that of Medal of Honor recipient from Santa Fe, Leroy Petrie, who was honored for his bravery with the Congressional Medal of Honor in 2001. Staff Sergeant Petrie, a veteran Army Ranger, moved to clear a courtyard of a house that contained potential high-value combatants. While crossing the courtyard, Staff Sergeant Petrie and another Ranger were engaged and wounded by automatic fire. Still under fire, wounded in both legs, he led the other Ranger to cover. He then reported the situation and engaged the enemy with a hand grenade, providing suppression as other Rangers moved in. The enemy responded by coming closer and throwing grenades. The first grenade explosion knocked several Rangers to the ground and wounded them with shrapnel. The second grenade only landed a few feet away from them. Instantly realizing the danger, Staff Sergeant Petrie unhesitantly and with complete disregard of his own safety moved forward, picked up the grenade, in an effort to clear the threat, threw the grenade away from his fellow Rangers. Unfortunately, as he released it, it blew up and detonated in his hand, amputating his right hand at the wrist and further injuring him with shrapnel. Although grievously wounded, his gallant act undeniably saved his fellow Rangers from being severely wounded or killed. He continued to maintain the presence of mind to place a tourniquet on his right wrist and on another Ranger before communicating the situation by radio to coordinate support. Veterans exhibit honor, duty, and sacrifice in their service of our country and every day thereafter. Veterans continue to serve today here, Los Alamos, as teachers, coaches, church members, leaders in the community. I think I speak for everyone when they say we enjoy it. When people say thank you for your service, somebody you don't know says thank you for your service. And we may even tell you about our experiences if we can. So sometime soon after you think of it, ask them about their own examples of honor, duty, and sacrifice displayed by their fellow veterans. I guarantee you won't regret it. Thank you. I hope everybody's not too cold, and God bless America.